In we go!
25 entries, 7 levels. I've put together an iceberg with the most disturbing movies made in the 90s. To start, we'll highlight some of the more famous messed up movies, but the deeper into the iceberg we get, the more twisted things will become. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Disclaimer. Level 1. The Faculty, 1998. Robert Rodriguez's The Faculty welcomes us into the halls of Harrington High School in Ohio, where something sinister is lurking. Throughout the movie, students begin to discover that their teachers, members of the faculty, are transforming into strange alien creatures bent on domination. The film's most chilling sequence occurs when Casey Connor and Delilah, Prophet, hide in the teacher's lounge closet. Suddenly, they witness Coach Willis and Mrs. Olson corner Nurse Harper in a terrifying confrontation. The teachers forcibly restrain Harper as she struggles, Willis clamping his hands around her throat while Mrs. Olson watches with an uncomfortably cold, blank expression. As Harper's resistance weakens, they force a parasitic creature into her ear. She, too, is about to transform. Later in the movie, Casey and Delilah encounter Nurse Harper walking the halls, seemingly unharmed and eerily composed about everything going on. That weird, inexplicable resurrection confirms their worst fears. The faculty aren't themselves anymore. They've become hosts to alien parasites intent on taking over their school, then the world. When the movie was released, it was widely hailed as a clever little reinterpretation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers for a 1990s teen audience. As one reviewer stated, it delivers gripping, scary scenes while maintaining a self-aware tone. Basically, exactly what the writer, Kevin Williamson, did with Scream. The faculty's transformation is obviously very scary, but it landed with teen audiences because it was all a metaphor for authority figures becoming increasingly controlling and emotionless, tapping into universal teenage anxieties about conformity and autonomy. It's the people we're supposed to trust becoming something unrecognizable, and they want to make us just like them. Misery, 1990. Misery has one of the most troubling, disturbingly realistic premises ever committed to film. Romance novelist Paul Sheldon crashes his car during a blizzard and awakens in the remote home of Annie Wilkes, a former nurse who proclaims herself his #1 fan.
Yes, that's right. I'm also a nurse.
What begins as a rescue quickly transforms into captivity when Annie discovers that Paul has killed off her favorite character, Misery Chastain, in his latest manuscript.
Misery Chastain cannot be dead.
Annie forces Paul to burn his only copy and rewrite the story to bring Misery back to life. She holds him prisoner in her isolated home, and because no one knows where he is, he's entirely at her mercy.
Because if I die, you die.
Paul, as well as the audience, is now trapped in Annie's twisted world. The film's most notorious moment arrives when Annie discovers Paul has been attempting to escape. She explains the concept of hobbling, a practice from African diamond mines where workers who stole diamonds had their ability to run permanently removed. Annie places a wooden block between Paul's feet and brings down a sledgehammer on his fragile ankles. Director Rob Reiner makes sure we know exactly what's happening as Paul's feet bend at impossible angles, making it impossible for him to escape. It's horrific, but actually it's very toned down from Stephen King's original novel, where Annie severs Paul's foot entirely with an axe and cauterizes the wound. That was deemed too extreme for the movie. But Kathy Bates nails her performance as Annie. She doesn't fit the typical horror villain mold. She's not a masked killer or supernatural entity. She's not even necessarily evil. She's an ordinary-looking woman whose obsession and love for art have curdled into something monstrous. The performance earned Bates an Academy Award, making this the only Stephen King adaptation to win an Oscar to date. What makes it so disturbing is that Annie represents every creator's nightmare, the fan whose devotion becomes imprisonment. She forces Paul to write not for artistic expression, but for survival, turning his greatest talent into his cage, and maybe even his death. Event Horizon, 1997. Event Horizon starts with a rescue mission in 2047 to investigate a missing spaceship that mysteriously reappears near Neptune after 7 years. The crew of the Lewis and Clark boards the vessel expecting to find survivors, maybe some answers about where it went. What they discover instead fundamentally changes how an entire generation thinks about space travel and what might be waiting out there in the dark.
USAC intercepted a radio transmission from a decaying orbit around Neptune. The source of this transmission has been identified as the Event Horizon.
The ship's experimental gravity drive was designed to fold space-time, creating shortcuts across the universe by opening gateways through dimensions. But something went catastrophically wrong during its maiden voyage. The Event Horizon didn't just travel through space, it went somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that defies human comprehension.
The ship doesn't really go faster than light. What it does is it creates a dimensional gateway that allows it to jump instantaneously from one point of the universe to another light years away.
The revelation comes from a recovered video log found aboard the ship by the rescue team. What unfolds on screen is 20 seconds of pure nightmare fuel that even today is often brought up as one of the scariest scenes ever put into a Hollywood movie. The footage shows the original crew in their final moments engaged in acts of extreme violence against each other. Director Paul Anderson hired adult film performers and real amputees to create the most disturbing imagery possible. The scene depicts the crew engaging in frenzied acts of self-destruction and violence, with glimpses of people being stabbed through the head, intestines being pulled from mouths, and other forms of brutal elimination. Captain Miller's reaction speaks for every viewer watching. He simply turns off the recording and states, "We're leaving." But that 20-second sequence burns itself into your memory, leaving audiences with images they can't unsee. It's horrifying. This single scene traumatized viewers so thoroughly that many report being unable to revisit the film for years, myself included. What's even more fascinating is that the theatrical version was already heavily censored. Anderson's original 130-minute cut contained even more graphic content that test audiences found completely unbearable. Studio executives were so disturbed by the footage that they demanded massive cuts, yet what remained still proved too intense for many viewers. Today, it's usually listed on the scariest movies list. Oh, and if you're going to go and watch this movie, despite what Sam Neill might try to tell you, you will need eyes to see it. Level 2. Leprechaun, 1993. Leprechaun is all about, what else, a vengeful leprechaun who believes his pot of gold has been stolen, setting him loose on a killing spree that defies any logic and embraces pure, unhinged chaos.
Try as they will, and try as they might. Who steals me gold won't live through the night.
What makes it so good is its commitment to the ridiculous while never losing sight of genuine menace. When the leprechaun encounters a coin shop owner, he's not just going to kill this guy, no. He climbs onto a pogo stick and bounces repeatedly on the man's chest while singing a twisted nursery rhyme. This old lep, he played one, he played pogo on his lung. Like I said, it's absurd. The director Mark Jones originally conceived this as a straight horror movie, but Warwick Davis injected dark humor into his performance, creating something that shouldn't work but absolutely does. The leprechaun becomes genuinely unsettling precisely because he treats carnage like a game. His childlike enthusiasm for destruction makes each encounter unpredictable and increasingly uncomfortable. The eye replacement scene pushes it further than any other. After losing his own eye in a confrontation, the leprechaun calmly removes the eyeball from a deceased police officer and inserts it into his own socket, declaring, "An eye for an eye, me dear." He treats the officer's body like spare parts, revealing the creature's complete disconnection from human empathy.
An eye for an eye, me dear.
That weird mix of genuine scares with intentional camp creates something uniquely disturbing. The leprechaun operates by fairy tale rules in a modern setting, making him unpredictable and therefore terrifying. He'll pause mid-chase to clean a house because his obsessive-compulsive nature demands it, then resume his deadly pursuit moments later.
You gotta help us! Please help us! Oh my God! You gotta help us!
I want to go.
And through it all, a pre-Friends Jennifer Aniston runs from him, giving a surprisingly grounded performance, treating every ridiculous situation with complete seriousness. Campfire Tales, 1997. Campfire Tales opens with 4 teenagers stranded after a car crash, huddled around a fire telling urban legends to pass the time. It's an anthology movie, allowing us to get multiple horror stories in one.
2 people were hacked to death around here.
Yeah, right. You see that for a second? Oh, this is sick.
But the film doesn't rely on jump scares. Instead, it builds dread through familiar scenarios twisted into nightmarish realities. People Can Lick 2 delivers perhaps the most viscerally disturbing sequence in any horror anthology. A young girl, alone for her birthday, believes her dog is providing comfort by licking her hand throughout the night. The dripping sounds she hears could be a leaky faucet or rain or something else entirely. Whatever that is, the reassuring licks from below her bed signals safety. But then, she sees a message scrawled in blood on the mirror. People can lick too.
I told you before, flattery will get you nowhere.
A human adult head pokes out from under the bed, confirming what we didn't want to know. A predator spent hours beneath her bed, mimicking her pet's affection. Her pet is dead, and we fell for it too. The comfort of a dog licking us is so relatable that it quickly becomes terrifying once we piece it all together. The honeymoon takes a different approach, trapping newlyweds Rick and Valerie in their RV while unseen creatures stalk them through the Nevada wilderness. As in all good horror movies, the couple ignores warnings from a local man who ends up becoming the first victim. From there, the tension builds through intimate moments interrupted by scratching sounds and glimpses of movement outside their vehicle. Rick ventures out to investigate and never returns. Left alone in the RV, Valerie is forced to fight for her life against some horrifying-looking creatures. When dawn arrives and an officer comes to save her, she looks back to reveal Rick's body hanging above their RV. That's a good scary story. House on Haunted Hill, 1999. House on Haunted Hill, the 1999 remake of William Castle's 1959 classic, opens with the most unsettling 3 minutes you'll witness in late 90s horror. There's literally no time for pleasantries. Instead, director William Malone drops viewers directly in to the Vannicut Psychiatric Institute for the Criminally Insane, where Dr. Richard Benjamin Vannicut performs what he calls surgery on a fully conscious patient. The patient's eyes are wide open, he's strapped down, the doctor cuts into him while he's completely aware of every slice. No anesthesia, no mercy, just Vannicut's twisted belief that electricity and extreme procedures could somehow cure insanity. It's basically everybody's worst nightmare, being awake during surgery. Then everything goes wrong. The inmate breaks free, having had enough of Vannicut's treatments. The doctor, who spent years inflicting unimaginable pain on helpless patients, suddenly finds himself on the receiving end of his own actions, as the very people he tormented drag him away for their own brand of medical experimentation. Vannicut triggers the lockdown system, sealing everyone inside as fire consumes the building. 113 people die in the blaze. Only 5 staff members survive by hiding in the basement. Fast forward to 1999, and amusement park mogul Stephen Price decides this charred monument to human cruelty makes the perfect venue for his wife's birthday party. He offers 5 strangers $1 million each to spend the night here. What Price doesn't know is that the house itself has chosen these guests. Each person is a descendant of those 5 surviving staff members.
Right here, Mr. Pritchett. As well as 5 other bona fide bank drafts for $1 million each.
The building remembers everything. Dr. Vannicutt's spirit still roams the halls, along with every patient who died screaming in 1931. The house wants revenge, and it's been waiting 68 years to collect. Once the doors seal shut for the night, the real experiments begin. And not everybody is going to make it out intact. Return of the Living Dead 3, 1993. Return of the Living Dead 3 strips away a lot of the dark comedy that defined its earlier entries to create something far more disturbing. Teenage army brat Kurt Reynolds steals his father's security keycard to impress his goth girlfriend Julie, leading them into a military facility where they witness scientists using trioxin gas to reanimate corpses for combat. But when the experiments go horribly wrong, zombies break free and kill the researchers, with only Kurt and Julie escaping undetected, carrying this terrible knowledge with them into the night. Later, Julie playfully grabs Kurt while he's driving, causing him to lose control, sending her flying into a telephone pole. The impact kills her instantly, but Kurt refuses to accept this reality. He drags her lifeless body back to the military base and exposes her to the same trioxin gas that created those mindless killing machines. Julie awakens, confused but seemingly normal, and they flee together in what becomes a nightmare of escalating horror. Julie's transformation begins, so subtle you almost wouldn't notice. First comes an inexplicable hunger that convenience store snacks cannot satisfy. Then she attacks a gang member, biting into his arm. Soon she's consuming the brains of a shop owner while Kurt watches in growing desperation. Most disturbing of all, Julie discovers that extreme physical pain temporarily suppresses her human cravings. This dark romance culminates when military forces capture Julie and plan to use her reanimated body as a weapon. Kurt breaks her free but gets bitten in the process. Realizing their fate, they choose the furnace over separation, stepping hand in hand into the flames while sharing one final kiss. It's kind of romantic, if you ignore all the zombie stuff. You know what else is romantic? Hitting that subscribe button. It helps us make more videos for you, just like this one. Let's move on to the next level. Level 3. Ice Cream Man, 1995. Ice Cream Man opens with young Gregory Tudor watching his beloved neighborhood ice cream vendor get gunned down in a drive-by shooting. As the blood mixes with melting dairy products in the gutter, Gregory doesn't cry or run. He just stands there wondering,
Who's gonna bring me ice cream, Mommy?
priorities, right? But this moment breaks something fundamental inside him, sending him to the Wishing Well Sanatorium where doctors stick needles into his skull and feed him ice cream while clowns visit his room. Seems obvious he will end up troubled. Years later, Gregory takes over the dead man's route and calling himself the Ice Cream Prince. But Gregory's frozen treats contain special ingredients. Cockroaches in the raspberry sherbet and diced up eyeballs in the Rocky Road marshmallows. He feeds this concoction to a detective investigating missing children, and the camera lingers on the officer's tongue, extracting the, stuff from melting vanilla.
Hey, now that's an ice cream cone. What's in it?
The film's most notorious moment arrives when Gregory pursues a local woman by presenting her with a severed head perched atop an oversized waffle cone, complete with a second scoop and cherry on top. Now, I know what you're thinking. How does a waffle possess the structural integrity to support 8 pounds of human head? But there it is, blood, or maybe it is cherry syrup, dripping down the cone. A nightmare ice cream sundae. Children soon start disappearing from the neighborhood as Gregory kidnaps Small Paul and Roger, keeping them in his ice cream factory alongside all of those decomposing bodies. The local kids suspect him immediately, but adults dismiss their concerns. So Gregory continues his rounds without issue, serving contaminated treats while having flashbacks to his institutional trauma. Look, it's not a movie based in any kind of logic, but either way, the sound of the ice cream truck becomes pretty horrifying. Dr. Giggles, 1992. Dr. Giggles hit theaters in 1992, telling the story of Evan Rendell Jr., nicknamed Dr. Giggles for his unnerving high-pitched laugh that erupts during his most deranged moments. The story unfolds in the town of Moore High, where decades earlier, Dr. Evan Rendell Sr. was discovered removing hearts from living patients in a desperate attempt to save his dying wife. The townspeople, enraged by his actions, dragged him into the streets and stoned him to death. During the chaos, his young son, Evan Jr., mysteriously vanished. But at a certain point, we find out how Evan escaped. Dr. Rendell Sr., knowing the mob was coming, took extreme measures to protect his son. He cut open his wife's dead body, placed the boy inside, and sewed her closed, leaving only a small scalpel for Evan to cut his way out after the danger passed. Suddenly, adult Evan's damaged psyche makes sense. After escaping from a mental institution, he returns to Moore High, wielding his medical instruments as weapons to harm and hurt his vulnerable patients.
Leave it in for at least a minute.
Eventually, Evan becomes fixated on Jennifer Campbell, a teenager with a heart condition reminiscent of his mother's. His twisted logic leads him to believe he must operate on her to complete his father's work. In doing so, he believes he will be cured. Actually, he will just end up taking the life of an innocent woman, but how could he know that? He's too busy laughing. Graveyard Shift, 1990. The 1990 Stephen King adaptation Graveyard Shift opens in the sweltering heat of a decrepit textile mill in Gates Falls, Maine, where the night shift workers face bigger issues than just machinery malfunctions. Drifter John Hall takes a job at the rat-infested Bachman Mills, tasked with cleaning out the basement during the July 4th weekend. But what lurks beneath is far more sinister than he could expect. The mill itself is ancient and oppressive, with the director Ralph Singleton crafting an atmosphere that feels strange and sinister, with oversized rats scurrying all over the place. We know that the heat is oppressive, forcing workers into the graveyard shift where temperatures soar above 100 degrees. But the deeper into the basement we get, the more horror we start to uncover. The cleanup crew discovers red water flooding the lower levels, connecting the mill to the cemetery above in ways they just cannot seem to explain. The workers discover they're not just dealing with ordinary rodents, but creatures that have evolved in isolation, growing to disturbingly large proportions. Some rats reach 3 feet in height, while others have developed bat-like wings and predatory instincts. Talk about rodents of unusual size. The most disturbing moment comes when crew members encounter a massive pile of bones, human remains accumulated over years of feeding. Here, the true scope of the horror becomes clear as workers realize they've stumbled into an active feeding ground. The creature responsible is a grotesque fusion of rat and bat, standing nearly 10 feet tall with wings and blood-stained claws. When it attacks, victims are dragged into the bone pit where the beast tears into their soft, vulnerable flesh with teeth designed specifically for killing. In fact, the rat-bat hybrid is the strongest of this underground ecosystem, a queen-like creature that has grown to monstrous size through constant feeding on the poor cleaning crews that come down. Its attacks are based entirely in the darkness, using echolocation to hunt and devour its victims. Working in this factory brings a threat to their life far, far more dangerous than any mechanical accident could ever be. The Ugly, 1997. The Ugly opens in a decaying New Zealand mental institution where serial killer Simon Cartwright requests psychiatric revaluation from Dr. Karen Schumacher. Simon wants to prove he's been cursed after 5 years of confinement, but the question haunting every therapy session becomes whether redemption is possible for someone who claims an entity called the Ugly controls his deadly impulses.
I killed them because I'm the Ugly. Do you remember saying that?
I enjoyed killing.
Is that it?
Isn't that enough?
The film builds its central tension through these interviews where Simon's soft-spoken demeanor contrasts sharply with his confession that he enjoys killing people. Dr. Schumacher finds herself drawn deeper into Simon's psyche as he reveals his tragic backstory through fragmented flashbacks. Pretty soon, these therapy sessions become a psychological chess match. Simon appears rational and reformed, yet something sinister is lurking beneath his calm exterior.
People who kill repeatedly tend to have patterns. But some were people you knew and some weren't. You killed men and women.
No pattern.
No pattern. Compulsive killing with no pattern.
Simon describes the Ugly as voices in his head that compel him to take lives, an alter ego born from years of childhood cruelty. His mother tormented him relentlessly, driving away his only friend Julie and lying about his father's attempts to rescue him, eventually beating him with a strap after he tried returning Julie's glasses. That night, young Simon listened to the voices for the first time.
But the Ugly said that I could do worse. Much worse. Standing there, looking at my bandaged face, they started talking to me, telling me what to do.
While his mother sleeps, Simon approaches her bed with a straight razor, the weapon that becomes his signature throughout his spree. He slits her throat and stands gazing at her bloody corpse, marking the moment when the Ugly fully takes hold. The film depicts this blood as pitch black rather than red, creating an odd visual that makes the violence seem otherworldly, not human. What makes Simon a particularly unsettling villain is his selective empathy. He spares a deaf girl because she's damaged like him, and stops to help an injured dog while transporting a fresh corpse. He has some compassion, which means he's capable of human connection, he just chooses to ignore it. The therapy sessions continue unraveling his psyche, but whether Simon has truly conquered the Ugly remains unclear. Level 4. The Dentist, 1996. The Dentist opens with some professional perfection. Dr. Alan Finestone runs a successful Los Angeles practice, lives in an immaculate home, and maintains an obsessive devotion to cleanliness that seems admirable. The 1996 film takes the world's most common phobia, the dentist, and transforms it into a nightmare scenario where the person meant to help you becomes your worst enemy. Finestone's descent begins when he discovers his wife Brooke's affair with their pool man. The betrayal totally shatters his carefully constructed world of order and perfection, sending him into a calculated, troubled unraveling where his professional skills become his main weapon of revenge.
I am very disappointed in you. I am a dentist, and this is my wife, you filthy piece of...
In his newly designed opera-themed treatment room, he convinces Brooke to try out the dental chair under the guise of a routine cleaning. The scene builds with operatic music playing in the background as he binds her to the chair with a scarf and administers nitrous oxide.
Glad you pulled me, huh? Oh, no, I've been watching you. I've been watching what you've become. Filth. Just like the rest of them.
Then he does something that we didn't even know we should be afraid of. He removes all of her teeth and cuts out her tongue while she remains sedated. Unlike many 90s horror movies, there's no jump scares or supernatural elements. It's all focused on the very realistic fears we all have. The sounds of drills, the helplessness of being reclined in a chair, the vulnerability of having someone work inside your mouth. Every appointment becomes an opportunity for him to harm someone.
I am an instrument of perfection and hygiene, the enemy of decay and corruption, a dentist. And I have a lot of work to do.
The director Brian Usna, who previously worked on Reanimator, understands that the most effective horror comes from corrupting something mundane. Corbin Burnson's performance captures both the professional competence and growing instability that makes Finestone genuinely terrifying. The character isn't a monster from the start, he's a respected professional whose expertise becomes perverted by his total mental collapse. It's ultimately a total nightmare made into a horrific reality. Brain Scan, 1997. Brain Scan welcomes us into the basement lair of Michael Brower, a teenager whose world shrunk after a car crash killed his mother and left him with a permanent limp. Now he spends his days watching slasher films and spying on his neighbor through a remote-controlled camera. When his friend Kyle tells him about an ultra-realistic video game that interfaces with your subconscious, Michael can't resist calling the number in a Fangoria magazine ad.
Dude, man, it's interactive CD-ROM. Here, you gotta look at the ad at least, man. It's in Fangoria. You know, the one with the popping eyeballs on the cover.
The Brain Scan disc arrives with a warning that the experience resembles hypnotic suggestion. But obviously he ignores that completely. Michael loads it up and meets the Trickster, a sinister host who guides him through what feels like the most immersive gaming experience ever created. The first mission sends Michael into a stranger's house where he watches his own hands select a kitchen knife and creep into a bedroom. The sleeping victim never sees it coming. Michael slashes the man to death and slices off his foot as a trophy. He wakes up thrilled by how realistic the whole experience was, but that excitement turns to horror when the morning news reports an identical killing in his neighborhood. Every detail matches perfectly. The victim, the location, even the missing foot. Michael rushes to his refrigerator and finds the severed appendage waiting inside, wrapped in plastic. He didn't play it, he did it.
Who are you? What did you do?
If I were you, I would address that question to myself.
Okay, who killed that man? And what's happened?
You were there, Michael. You know exactly what you did.
The Trickster materializes from his computer screen, no longer confined to the game world, but a real-life punk rock nightmare. He confirms all of Michael's worst fears. The game doesn't just simulate violence, it orchestrates real deaths through hypnotic control. The Trickster demands Michael continue playing, threatening exposure if he refuses. Soon, Detective Hayden begins circling closer as bodies pile up. Michael realizes he's trapped in a cycle where each gaming session produces another corpse and deeper evidence of his involvement. It's an inescapable nightmare and, weirdly, a game that you could totally imagine eventually becoming a reality. Nightbreed, 1990. Nightbreed opens with Aaron Boone trapped in recurring nightmares about a place called Midian, where monsters roam free. His psychiatrist, Dr. Decker, listens with unusual interest, secretly harboring his own dark compulsions as a masked killer stalking families across the city. Decker manipulates Boone into believing he's responsible for these brutal killings, prescribing what he claims is lithium, but is actually LSD.
2 days ago, the police brought me some photographs. They wanted to know if any of my patients was capable of doing what's in those photographs.
The hallucinogenic episode lands Boone in a psychiatric hospital where he encounters Narcisse, a slightly kooky fellow patient. Suddenly, Narcisse begins cutting away his facial skin with bladed instruments attached to his fingers. The camera refuses to look away as he tears strips of flesh from his skull, revealing bone and tissue underneath. Even when nurses restrain him, he continues picking at the wounds, unable to have any kind of self-control over the nightmare he's found himself in. This scene is a perfect example of the film's unflinching approach to body horror. Director Clive Barker, fresh from his success with Hellraiser, crafted Nightbreed as a monster rally unlike anything audiences had seen. The creatures inhabiting Midian aren't the kind of movie monsters we've gotten used to in most Hollywood movies. They're creations of elaborate practical effects showcasing extreme physical transformations. Pelican, with his razor-sharp teeth, bites Boone's neck, beginning his transformation into something beyond human. In its original form, the film was so violent and shocking that it earned some severe editing from studio executives who trimmed nearly an hour of footage. Yet what remained still contained enough graphic content to disturb viewers. A family gets slaughtered in their home, a truck collision leaves Boone hospitalized, and the climactic battle between monsters and police features dismemberment and carnage. It's not particularly less disturbing. Barker designed these elements deliberately, aiming to create what he called the Star Wars of horror films. The monsters become sympathetic figures while supposedly normal humans reveal themselves as the true threats. Dr. Decker's button-eyed mask creates an image of pure malevolence, while the Nightbreed simply seek refuge from a world that wants them destroyed. Boxing Helena, 1993. Boxing Helena is one of cinema's most unsettling examinations of obsession and control. Dr. Nick Kavanagh becomes fixated on Helena, a woman who dismisses him after their brief, intimate encounter. But Nick cannot give up, especially when fate delivers Helena directly into his hands. Helena suffers a hit-and-run accident outside Nick's mansion. Instead of calling for proper medical help, Nick seizes this moment as his opportunity. He takes her into his home, claiming to provide medical care, but his true intentions become horrifyingly clear when he amputates both her legs above the knee. He justifies it as a medical necessity, but the reality is far more calculated.
When I got to her, she was hypoxic and cyanotic. Her blood pressure was life-threatening. I had to operate here in the lab.
Even so, the amputation isn't enough. Helena's spirits remain unbroken, her contempt for Nick unchanged, despite her newfound dependence. When she attempts to strangle him during an escape effort, Nick escalates his control by removing her arms above the elbow. Now she exists as a limbless prisoner completely reliant on her captor for every basic human need. Helena, despite being the victim of kidnapping and mutilation, maintains her dominance through constant verbal attacks on Nick's inadequacies. She ridicules his shortcomings while he desperately seeks her affection, creating a twisted power dynamic where the physically powerless woman psychologically controls her physically dominant captor. Nick's delusion deepens as he believes this forced dependency will eventually lead to their inevitable love. The premise that absolute helplessness causes romantic feelings reflects a very dangerous fantasy about possession and control. Helena becomes an object to be shaped rather than a person to be loved, reduced to existing in whatever form Nick decides she should take. The film's controversy stems from this central horror. A man who believes he can surgically create the perfect relationship by removing a woman's ability to leave. It's a disturbing attitude that some men truly hold, and this movie makes that a disturbing, horrific reality. Level 5. Cube, 1997. Cube opens with a man named Alderson waking up in a sterile white room. 6 doors surround him. Floor, ceiling, each of the 4 walls. He picks one and steps through into an orange-tinted, identical space. The moment he moves forward, razor wire drops from above and slices him into perfect geometric pieces. His body falls apart like a dissected puzzle, the wire retracts, and the room resets. Welcome to the game. This establishes everything you need to know about what follows. 6 strangers find themselves trapped in this mechanized labyrinth of interconnected cubes, each room potentially hiding elaborate death mechanisms. The group includes a cop, a math student, a prison escapist, a conspiracy theorist doctor, an office worker, and someone with developmental disabilities. No one remembers how they arrived, and let's be honest, they're a bizarre group to be thrown together for no reason. Each doorway displays 3 sets of numbers etched into metal plates. The math student Levin theorizes these codes reveal which rooms contain traps. First, she believes prime numbers indicate danger. Wrong. People die testing that theory. Later, she realizes the numbers represent coordinates in a massive three-dimensional grid. The structure contains 17,576 rooms total, and they're moving constantly like a mechanical Rubik's Cube. The traps themselves operate with clockwork precision. Motion sensors trigger flame jets, pressure plates activate acid sprays, even sound detectors deploy spinning blades. Each mechanism resets after activation, waiting for the next victim to fall prey to their cruel game. What makes the scenario particularly unsettling is the mathematical precision required for survival. Without Levin's calculations, the group would wander randomly through nearly 18,000 rooms until dehydration, or worse, claims them. The numbers aren't actually coordinates, they reveal the room's movement patterns through complex algorithms. Remove the mathematician, and everyone dies. Director Vincenzo Natali wanted the deaths to be artful rather than gratuitous, but the wiretrap sequence immediately communicates the cube's inhuman efficiency at eliminating its occupants. It's brutal, effective, and it sets the stakes right away to show us that Cube is a near unwinnable game. Crash, 1996. David Cronenberg's Crash is one of the strangest, most disturbing movies you'll ever see. It's not a story about romance or passion. It's the first glimpse into a world where human flesh craves contact with machinery, where arousal comes from the collision of body and technology. Basically, it's about humans who lust over cars. James Ballard, a film producer trapped in a loveless marriage, crashes head-on into another car. The other driver dies instantly, but something awakens in Ballard during that brutal collision. The crash becomes his gateway into an underground community led by Vaughn, a scarred former scientist who orchestrates elaborate recreations of famous automobile fatalities. Vaughn photographs corpses impaled by dashboard ornaments and stages the deaths of James Dean and Jane Mansfield for audiences who gather in abandoned lots. He treats his own scars like prophecies, getting tattoos that mirror the grille patterns that were carved into his flesh. His followers engage in intimate acts inside these crashed vehicles, aroused by the proximity to destruction and the metal that has penetrated human skin. The characters seek climax through collision, finding release only when witnessing or experiencing near-death encounters. They pleasure themselves to crash test footage and photograph accident scenes like others might collect art. Gabriel, a group member, wears steel braces from her injuries and allows others to seek pleasure from her scar. It's deeply strange. Cronenberg presents this material with no judgment and a lot of detachment, filming the characters' encounters from a distance as they happen. The whole movie turns the car into an instrument of perversion, where wounds are now erogenous zones and twisted metal is the thing that gets them going, if you know what I mean. Each crash becomes more elaborate, each encounter more dangerous as the participants chase increasingly extreme experiences. The line between arousal and annihilation blurs until the characters can no longer distinguish between climax and death, seeking the ultimate collision that will finally satisfy their mechanical desires, even if it kills them. In the Mouth of Madness, 1994. John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness follows insurance investigator John Trent as he searches for missing author Sutter Kane, whose books have an unusual effect on his readers. They're going completely insane. What starts as a simple missing person case quickly becomes something far more disturbing.
For advance orders of Sutter Kane's latest novel, In the Mouth of Madness. When does fiction become religion? And are his fans dangerous?
Seemingly out of nowhere, an axe-wielding man attacks Trent in a restaurant, asking if he reads Sutter Kane before trying to kill him. Everything after follows that aggressive, uncomfortable tone. Trent discovers that Kane's book covers form a map to Hobbs End, a town that shouldn't exist, but somehow does.
Now I know why Kane had the artwork done himself. See this? It's a map. Like it or not, Kane's book covers place Hobbs End right in the middle of New England.
Once Trent and Kane's editor Linda Stiles reach this impossible place, the horror escalates dramatically. The townspeople aren't quite right. Their faces are deformed, their behavior is erratic. A man gets hacked to pieces by a group of people with axes, all of them with those same weird, twisted features. A woman even calmly eats a piece of the dead man's flesh, as if this is all perfectly normal behavior. It's just the way they live. Reality keeps shifting around Trent in a way that makes absolutely no sense. He encounters an old woman whose eyes have rolled back into her head, children with blood around their mouths, and a woman who crawls toward him with her body twisted in impossible ways. The sound of her bones snapping echoes as she laughs. But as time goes by, something changes. Trent realizes he's become a character in Kane's story. Kane himself appears explaining that the public's belief in his work has awakened ancient creatures that feed on madness. Now these beings need humanity to descend into insanity so they can return to our world.
When people begin to lose their ability to know the difference between fantasy and reality, the old ones can begin their journey back.
Trent finds himself carrying Kane's final manuscript back to the publishers, knowing it will drive more people mad, but unable to resist. The film ends with him watching his own story play out on a movie screen, laughing at the absurdity of the situation. He's condemned to a very rough life, but he's fine with it. Ravenous, 1999. Ravenous opens with Captain John Boyd arriving at Fort Spencer, a remote military outpost in 1847 California, where soldiers spend winter months slowly losing their minds. But the already creepy vibe escalates when a half-dead stranger named Calhoun stumbles through their door. Frostbitten and claiming to be the sole survivor of a wagon train disaster. His story unfolds like a nightmare. Travelers trapped in caves, eating their oxen, then their horses, then their leather belts, before finally turning to the bodies of their dead companions.
Proceeding in the snow was futile. We took shelter in a cave. Decided to wait until the storm had passed. The storm did not pass. We ate the oxen, all the horses, even my own dog.
What makes this tale particularly disturbing is how Calhoun describes the transformation that follows the consumption of human flesh. The Wendigo legend, as explained by the fort's Native American residents, suggests that eating another person grants their strength and creates an insatiable hunger for more. Calhoun's unnaturally quick recovery from his near-death state supports this mythology in ways that make the other soldiers deeply uncomfortable. Maybe it's possible that by consuming one another, they will survive longer.
Wendigo. A man eats another's flesh, and the more he eats, the more he wants to. And the more he eats, the stronger he becomes.
The horror escalates when Boyd and his fellow soldiers accompany Calhoun back to the cave site. What they discover is that Calhoun himself orchestrated the entire man-eating scenario.
How many did he say was in the party? 6, right?
Why?
It's a trap! He killed everyone. Calhoun killed everyone!
The film's most viscerally disturbing moment occurs when Calhoun reveals his true nature, actively tearing into human flesh with animalistic intensity. His character transforms from pathetic survivor to predatory creature without warning, his face smeared with blood as he devours his victims with no regret. All of his civilized instincts are now gone, replaced by pure animalistic urges he simply cannot resist. Level 6. Story of Ricky, 1991. The 1991 Hong Kong splatter film The Story of Ricky does something extremely unique with its genre. It takes what we know as the familiar martial arts formula and drenches it in blood. Bruce Lee would not have made this movie, let's put it that way. Ricky Ho arrives at a privatized prison system after killing a crime boss responsible for his girlfriend's death, carrying 5 bullets in his chest and fists that can and will punch through concrete. Ricky's first major confrontation happens in the prison showers, where he encounters an obese inmate called Mad Dragon. Obviously, we get the fun martial arts fist fight, but then Ricky's fist penetrates completely through his opponent's abdomen, creating a gaping wound that sprays blood and intestinal matter across the shower walls, and we realize the very different world this movie is set in. The practical effects work transforms what could be a standard kung fu beatdown into something straight out of a horror film. Then comes a scene that takes the movie to a whole other twisted level. When Ricky battles Hai, the leader of the prison's North Wing, he beats Hai so badly that his enemy's intestines are exposed and hanging from his body. Rather than simply dying, Hai wraps these organs around Ricky's neck, attempting to finish his opponent with his own entrails, even as his own life drains away. The scene operates on dream logic. We know it's anatomically impossible, yet it's extremely convincing within the film's heightened reality. But the movie ends with its biggest conflict of all as the warden battles Ricky. After the corrupt official transforms into a hulking monster, Ricky responds by tearing a hole through the man's stomach with his bare hands. The warden ends up in a meat grinder, his body literally processed like livestock. Nothing more than mush. Obviously, martial arts movies are full of scenes where we have superhuman warriors beating the crap out of basically anybody that crosses their path, but this really feels like an entirely new world. It's cartoonish, sure, but it feels weirdly, uncomfortably real. Oregon, 1996. Oregon is a 1996 Japanese police procedural, or is it? The story is set in Tokyo's underground organ trafficking network told through the eyes of Detective Numata, who infiltrates a plastic-covered den with his partner Tasaka. But actually, everything immediately fractures into something far more unsettling when their raid goes catastrophically wrong. Numata escapes while Tasaka gets captured, but this isn't where most crime thrillers would take you. Director Kei Fujiwara deliberately dismantles conventional storytelling, scattering narrative threads across multiple characters who may or may not be experiencing authentic reality. The film follows the organ dealer's Saiki and his one-eyed sister Yoko, Tasaka's identical twin searching for his brother, and Numata's deteriorating investigation. But these storylines don't connect in expected ways. Scenes could actually be rearranged without affecting the overall impact, creating a disorienting experience that mirrors the characters' psychological states. There's no easy time frame, it's just stuff happening. The most confrontational moment arrives when viewers witness a doctor removing an organ from a very conscious victim for black market purposes. The procedure is shown in explicit detail with close-ups that refuse to look away from the operation. Ordinarily, you'd think that a scene like this would be nothing more than pure gore for shock value, but no, this has a purpose. It's forcing you to confront the fact that this happens in reality. Fujiwara compounds the disturbing imagery with Saiki's experiment on captured detective Tasaka, who eventually appears nothing more than a mutated torso, the result of prolonged medical manipulation. For the organ dealers, human bodies are just vessels for spare parts, all while maintaining their own twisted family dynamics. Shot on 16mm film with minimal budget, Oregon forces viewers to confront uncomfortable questions about bodily autonomy and human value, as well as the very real issue of human trafficking, but, seen through the lens of a fever dream. The organ harvesting becomes a metaphor for how society consumes individuals for their life force, then dumps them. Level 7. Baby Blood, 1990. Baby Blood takes pregnancy horror to places most filmmakers wouldn't dare venture. This 1990 French shocker of a movie, directed by Alain Robert, presents a simple yet deeply unsettling premise. What happens when an ancient parasitic creature crawls into a woman's womb and starts making demands? Well, nothing good.
It was her, all right. I remember her. She didn't look so good. She kept talking to herself. She was pregnant.
The film follows Yanka, a circus performer whose life transforms after a serpent-like entity from primordial times finds a home inside her body and begins talking to her. This telepathic dialogue between mother and parasitic offspring creates the film's most disturbing dynamic. The entity speaks with childlike curiosity about the human world while simultaneously demanding that Yanka kill strangers and consume their blood for its nourishment. And every single time, Yanka does it, without question.
Yanka, I want the blood. of the man that you killed. I need it so that I can grow. I need it to be born. You must feed me.
She lures men into her trap with physical attraction, often using her pregnancy as both a vulnerability and a weapon. The creature guides her choices, encouraging her to target those who mistreat her or other women, as though it has a moral purpose. These encounters escalate from hesitant compliance to enthusiastic participation as Yanka discovers feminist liberation despite all of the violence. The film's most disturbing moments come from the conversations between host and parasite. Yanka attempts to reason with the entity, even threatening to go to drastic lengths to stop the cycle, but the creature doesn't respond well, instead threatening to tear her apart from the inside if she doesn't comply.
What are you thinking? You see, I can hurt you. I can cause you agony.
This psychological warfare plays out against a backdrop of increasingly graphic scenes of bloodshed, with decapitations, knife attacks, and bodies torn apart. Roba frames these killings as a systematic feeding, with each victim becoming sustenance for something ancient that views humanity as evolutionary stepping stones. The creature's ultimate goal to reach the ocean and complete its life cycle suggests this partnership between woman and parasite represents just one phase in a much larger, more terrifying plan. One that we might never fully understand. Hated. G.G. Allen and the Junkies, 1994. Todd Phillips' documentary, Hated, G.G. Allen and the Blood Junkies, presents an unflinching examination of perhaps punk rock's most notorious figure, G.G. Allen. The film refuses to sanitize or contextualize Allen's extreme behavior whatsoever. It wants you to make your own judgment. So the camera follows Allen during his final tour, capturing footage that most filmmakers would consider too disturbing for mainstream audiences. But here, it's all shown uncut, uncensored.
It was a review of this video. Watch Gigi stick a bottle in his... Watch Gigi beat up his band members. Watch Gigi take a rolling glass.
The documentary opens by establishing Allen's reputation through interviews with fans, detractors, and law enforcement. What becomes immediately clear is that attending an Allen show meant risking serious physical harm. And if you don't know why, the film wastes no time showing exactly why. The concert footage shows Allen stripping completely naked on stage, cutting his chest with razor blades, real razor blades. Blood streams down his torso as he continues performing, seemingly oblivious to the damage he's inflicting on himself. Or at least completely unbothered by the whole thing. That's just the beginning. At a certain point, Allen poops on stage, then proceeds to consume and smear the excrement across his body. Audience members recoil in horror, some vomiting, others fleeing the venue entirely because why would they ever want to stay?
I first went to see G.G. Allen and his band perform at the Lismar Lounge in New York City sometime in 1988. The show began and ended with Gigi stumbling down the stairs leading to the stage.
What makes the footage particularly unsettling is Allen's apparent disconnect from reality during these performances. He attacks audience members with microphone stands, breaking his own teeth against the equipment, not caring about anything. The documentary shows him being arrested multiple times, often while covered in bodily fluids and bleeding profusely. Hospital workers even removed glass shards from his entire body after one particularly violent show, but we know that he will just go back to doing what he always does. Phillips interviewed Allen during periods of imprisonment, revealing a man who viewed all of this extreme behavior as artistic expression. When the director interviews his family members, it becomes clear that his brother Merle, who played bass in the band, appears almost as disturbed as Gigi himself.
Immediate future, what are my plans? Stay one step ahead of the law. As long as I don't get arrested today, whatever's happening today is the only thing that really matters.
The film's power lies in its refusal to provide easy, or any, explanations for Allen's behavior. Phillips simply presents the evidence, allowing viewers to witness the complete breakdown of a human being through performance arts taken to its absolute extreme. Craving another movie iceberg? Why not check out this video on the most disturbing movie endings?